I'm live. It's not quite 4:15, but I always like to have a minute or two for Instagram to tell everyone that I'm here. I am trying to get my desk cleared up so that I can be gone for a bit. And, in case, hey Iris, you get hit by a bus, you'd hate to leave chaos behind. So I think I'm probably going to leave chaos behind whenever I go, and whether it is by bus or some other means. So there's all the little things that I have at my desk that I'm really used to just having at hand. So I end up at the very end of packing, just like throwing things into my carry-on because I'm afraid I'll need it while I'm gone. Do I ever need it? Rarely. But, could be that time. So like right now I'm looking at headphones, which I don't hardly ever use. I use them for exercising. Mitch doesn't have to listen to the tape. And so, they got this little doodah that goes in. But I've got a set of headphones that has a little thing that will go into the signal plug thing on my laptop. So I have this, so I can use this with my laptop. Anyhow, I need to put that aside for right now. I almost always make a list of what I'm going to pack. So this is a list I made this morning. And the only thing that I haven't gotten into my things yet is rubber gloves. So we're staying at a house and I wear rubber gloves to do the dishes, so I have to have those. And then I have this list, which I made a couple of days ago, and I have that I want to put my flat runners in for walking on the beach, and I keep forgetting because my shoes live downstairs. And I'm wearing this shawl because it's wet and damp here, and even though it's warmed up, it's kind of gotten, it's got that awful chill that you get when it's raining, but that's life here in Seattle. So today I'm talking about knitworthiness, writing myself notes, and I wanted to show you this pattern that I've been knitting, and we're going to the ballet tonight, which is why I'm wearing fancy clothes, and then we fly tomorrow morning, so I'll probably finish this tomorrow night. I've got like 10 rounds. I'm changing needle size, so it's a little awkward. So what I want to show you, you can really see this. Actually, maybe I'll take the time to lay it down and pick up the camera. So I did a bunch of short rows, and I did it in what I call the mesh section of this cowl. And here you can see. So the mesh section is like 3.5 stitches to the inch, which is cool. It's a very fun pattern to knit. You just have to be aware you're on the right row because it's really a pain in the butt to take out. So I'm going to flip my camera if I can figure that out. And okay, so those are some things that are hanging underneath my bookshelves that amused me earlier. One of which is I'd forgotten that I was doing samplers of stitches. Okay, so here's the cowl, and so this side over here considerably less lengthy than it is over here, and now I'll put you back. The mesh stretches way out to 3.5 stitches and 3.5 rows to the inch, and I kind of lost track last night, so I probably did more short rows than not more short rows, but more rows of the mesh than I really needed to, but as I said, I'm not taking it out. So this is, again, why I do not sample knit. So very excited to be coming to the end of that project. I'm always excited to come to the end of my projects. And since I'm here, my project bag, I did not really, kind of knew these existed, but I hardly ever go to a yarn shop. So this is apparently, you can put it on your needles, but you can also use it with this. And I've been using, so I got them all from Fiber MacGyver. And if you know Susie, she's got a camper or a little trailer. I think it's called Mavis. Anyhow, so the new things are, hey Lucinda, how are you? Of her camper van, which is, it's called Madge. Okay, so I've been finding those very helpful. I am not really inclined to use lifelines, but I think it would be excellent for lifelines and all of that disruption, knitworthiness. So this piece that I put on this morning, just mostly because it blended with my blouse, which is a beautiful blouse that I got, I figured, probably 15 or 16 years ago. So this was a project that I knit during my selfish knitting time, in a week between Christmas and New Year's, many years ago. I could not resist changing the designer's pattern, so it's kind of hers, kind of mine. I think it was part of a GAL knit along, anyhow, who knows. But so I do selfish knitting at the end of the year. It's kind of my reward that I just knit something that I don't have to write a pattern for. So I did my cool mohair and sock yarn scarf this year in December, which was again something that I had bought the yarn in Lyon. I wanted to do a specific project in it, and so I gave myself permission to just work on it. I bitched the whole time because there were 300 stitches on the needles, but it was my choice to make it 80 inches long, but that never prevents me from bitching about something. I absolutely adore it, and I am going to put out the pattern in pieces on my newsletter. It will eventually become a pattern that you can buy, but that way I can kind of get it out there and get it out of my head while I'm doing the tedium of making it a pattern. So I started thinking about knitworthiness because people so often, first they'll say, well, I can't tell my spouse that I bought all this yarn. And people make jokes about, purchasing yarn as a separate hobby from knitting. And I have certainly participated in that. And one time, years and years ago, was my older sister's 50th birthday, and she's probably 73 now. That's how many years ago it was. And we had done a year-long contest to see who used the most yarn. And so Mitch said that so I had different categories so everybody could win something. And Mitch said one of the categories should be for who purchased the most yarn, because he said he pays my credit card bill. So he also said at that point, or around that time, have you ever noticed that you never have the yarn that you want to make a project? So every new project started requires purchasing more yarn. And I realized he was absolutely right. And so I became very conscious of how much yarn I purchase. And while I don't purchase all my yarn, I started to be really careful about what I took from yarn companies. That made me feel less guilty to not have a bunch of yarn sitting around. And I felt like I was being more honest about what I could actually accomplish. So that's kind of my story about stash yarn. So, I have my whole shelf of yarn. Much of it has been given to me. And I really try to work from that yarn as much as I can because people have given it to me, and I want to make sure that they get something for their trust in me. Sometimes I take yarn and then it just doesn't work. And that is okay. And most yarn companies understand that not everything will turn into a project, but I really try to honor what I'm doing. So sometimes I do buy yarn, and that's like the project that I bought in Lyon. So I have a project called Lyon, and then a secondary project called Lyon Traboules. And Traboules are the passageways that the textile merchants used to get from where the textiles were made up on a hill down to river at sea level. There's actually 2 rivers in Lyon. So I wanted to have a project. We went to Lyon in the fall, and I really wanted to have something that I'd made from yarn from Lyon, of course. The hank that I picked up didn't have a label on it. You know, the shop owner just rung it up and didn't think to ask me if I wanted a label. So anyhow, it's mohair dyed in Lyon. The other yarn I bought to go with it was British sock yarn because that was all they had. But I do work on projects where I've purchased the yarn, and that I consider that selfish knitting. It's something that I personally want. So I'm not at all, I mean, I only design what I want to. So I'm always working on selfish knitting projects. But I'm quite struck by how, as women, we don't own what we do, and that we have a right to acquire product to feed our hobby. So I'm wondering how you guys feel about that. Lucinda says that she absolutely is, it's never the right color or weight. I did just go through looking for a couple of quick projects to take with me, and I found a skein of yarn that I got from a dyer probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I just haven't had time to do something with it. So I grabbed that and something else, and actually all of the yarn that I grabbed. So 2 of the skeins, or they're half skeins at this point, I purchased. They're alpaca. I've already made something out of it. The one is a skein that I was given by Reiwa Yarns. The other was a gift, and then I have 2 other skeins that were given to me. And so I'm going to make something of those, or think about making something of those. I've been fooling around with, sorry, I never have anything close by. I've been fooling around with this pattern. Actually, there it is. And so I've been working on cowl pattern for that, which will be available at the beginning of March. And I now want to do something flat. So this is my in the round swatch, but it's slip stitches, so the backside is attractive enough to use to do in something flat. It'll probably just be at least to start out. So oftentimes women knit things for, Lucinda says, I love the selfish knitting. For the past 5 years, I knit my Christmas gifts for myself, yet I have knitted hats to donate to others, so I say knit something for yourself and knit something for others too. I agree, that's a really good way to go about it. And I think part of the problem is that people get involved in projects and they're larger than they think, or it doesn't go the way they think, and so then they put it aside and then it becomes a guilt project, and that's horrible. And so I'll just kind of segue into something that means a lot to me, which is fit and sizing. And over the past 3 or 4 years, when I've really been focused on this, one of the things I've found is that nobody wants to take their measurements. And so we tend to approach our knitting with a great deal of hope. And unless you're willing to take those measurements, you don't know whether something's actually going to fit for you. And so then maybe you get to a certain point on your project and you kind of realize that it's not going to fit the way you thought it was going to. And then they tend to get put aside, or they get finished and you don't wear it because it doesn't fit or it's not quite right. And, you know, when somebody asks you about it, it then becomes unhappy. And so then you don't knit for yourself. So I know that Iris is knitting something for herself. Okay, so Iris says, I have become much more aware of how much stash I have and how much I purchase, but the next sweater in the queue, I don't have the main color. And see, I think that's perfectly fine to have to buy something to complete. You have my permission to do that. So, you know, how would you know all those colors that you were going to need? And, you know, I think having stash is personal for everybody. I find I'm just happier not having, you know, more than I can see into the realistic future. And that, of course, you're going to make impulse purchases. I have some beautiful yarn that I purchased because I had a yarn that I had purchased, and I started a project with it and realized I wasn't going to have enough. Well, it turns out that they don't make that color anymore. So, I'm looking online, and the yarn that I chose that I thought might be close turned out the one that I have is like fall colors, and this one's like lilacs. Totally doesn't go. So, of course, I want to make something else out of it. But one of the things that I do is I leave yarn in hanks so that I don't, hey Trina, so I don't get it onto needles, and that keeps me from getting too many projects going usually. So I will admit that I have a project that I started probably over a year ago and got quite far on it and put it aside for some reason. And I am not packing that to take with me, even though I could probably finish it. But I want some quicker knits. And I've got, work knitting that I have to cool. So Iris says, I've taken my measurements. Boy, was I in for a shock. I will be sending them along for our fit group. You are sworn to secrecy for those measurements. I will not even remember them. So no worries, Iris. And none of us want anybody to know what our measurements are. I talk about my bust and my hips. I really never mention that my waist is, I always say it's 32. It's probably 34 because I've been eating too much. Hey, Amy. And, I'm saying it's probably 34, but I haven't measured it. My key measurements have stayed pretty much the same. And I took them all when we were in Bali. That seemed like the moment to do it. Yeah, because Jamie needed them to put something into the pattern tailor. So I'm standing in our hotel in Bali and I'm taking my measurements, and I haven't taken them since then. So that was almost a year ago, and I probably should take them again. So if anybody wants help taking their measurements, or Amy says I'm a selfish knitter. You go, Amy. If anybody wants, I'd be happy to set up some time and we can do it together. I always find that once you get over the initial shock of having someone take your measurements, that you kind of get past it. One of the best classes I ever did was taking people's measurements. And I had a lot of fat people in there, and they just wanted somebody to write down the numbers for them, and I totally get that. So if we do it virtually, obviously I can't take your measurements for you, but I would be happy to show you how. You can also go to my website, and I think if you type in measurements, there's a document. I'll have to look and see, which I've updated because I realized that really taking 6 measurements at a time is about all you can do. So I've divided it so that you're doing your armpit to your hips in one session, and then your upper body. And there are some measurements here that it's really hard to take on your own, so you have to get a spouse or a friend to take those. And then measuring your arms, and we have measurements for using with making yoke sweaters. So those are kind of a separate thing. And then there's taking the side measurement and the front measurement for bust start calculator. But I'm happy to, get on Zoom and strip down to a camisole so that we can take measurements together. Oh, good. So Lucinda's already checked. So that one I think is the list that is 37 or 42 measurements, but I've got a newer one. I can't recall whether I uploaded it. Yeah, so in that there's video links. Oh yeah, it's probably connected to the horizontal bust start calculator, but it's readily available. Thank you, Amy. Since Jamie's gone, I can't remember all of the things because I'm doing everything from winding my yarn, and I did it for that unequal divide series of posts. Yeah, so I do everything from winding my yarn to today I was printing patterns to send out. I'm just not good at things that you have to pay real attention to. So I was mailing a pattern to Lucinda because I want her to give me some feedback on it. And I've split the pattern into 4 separate documents. And I didn't notice on one of the sections that I didn't change the page number. So then I noticed towards the end that I didn't have all the pages, and so I had to go back, and I can complicate anything. So if you want to do some selfish knitting, be sure you're on my Inside Scoop on Substack, and because I'm going to release it through my newsletter. Yeah, thanks, Lucinda. I sent the yarn and that off today. I swear the mile between me and the post office is the longest mile in my life. I know you're going to knit from it, but I also want some feedback because I think you're honest and you use other people's patterns, so you can give me some good feedback. So I'm just going to get up and grab this. So this is the scarf that I'm talking about that I'm going to do the pattern for. It's short rows, so it's like much wider there than it is at the center. And I use 2 yarns. It's done end to end. And so like I did this 80 inches long, so each row was 300 stitches, except for the ends they were like 110 stitches, or maybe one was 80 and one was 110. So I don't like things too close around my neck, so I love things that are long that I can kind of loop around. And then I have these cute little things on the ends. So they're, turn to right side. So this one is 2 colors. It's actually 2. This one I put a bead on. So they're just little corkscrews, which I love to knit. And oddly, I really hate doing like things like this, although I do them all the time. So this one was using 2 yarns. I think it's particularly effective, but it was too fussy for me to use 2 yarns at once. And I tried doing them so that they would just be done at the end of the row, but that just ended up, So, that measurement chart is good. I mean, I worked on it for a long, long time. And then I put little French knots in the center. You don't have to add those to yours. This scarf took about 80 grams of fingering weight. You can do it in any weight, and it's just flat knitting. So I will just be giving you formulas, and I will do the math for you if you want. Or hopefully I'm going to learn how to do tables on my website. So I've been using this table up for years, and I had to renew it, and I couldn't buy it. Some problem with the website. And so I ended up having to get something else, in part because the program has not been updated, and it was causing problems with another program that I use. So I decided to get something that was up to date. But now I have to redo all my tables that are on all my calculators on my website. So if you need to figure out how much yarn you need for something, you're out of luck until mid-February. I think I'm a little scattered right now, and I need to get the rest of my stuff shoved in my carry-on before I go to the ballet. Yeah, so Lucinda, I do not do beading, but I love beads. And when we go up to Vancouver, Canada, they're jasper, they're kind of green and salmon colored. There's this great bead shop. I always buy way more than I should, so I've got all these beads in my drawer. But then I always have what I need. So so we're going, thank you for asking, Iris. She asked what ballet we're going to. I'm not a fan of ballet, but one of my good friends is a draper and has worked in costume departments her entire adult life, including she worked on Cats in New York. So we actually know each other because of knitting. And so she retired from her job at the University of Washington, was asked by Pacific Northwest Ballet to be the draper for a new set of costumes for Sleeping Beauty. And, some well-known designer designed the costumes. She said she can hardly wait. Today is her last day at the ballet. And so the costumes are gorgeous, but there's a lot of swirls in them. So a draper is like the head dressmaker. So she gets the sketch from designer, and she figures out how to make it and how to make it fit. And of course, it has to be done in the yarn or the fabric that somebody else chose. So these have these big swirls that are like black on colored background. There's several different colors, and there is some place on them where they have illusion, which is that skin colored stuff that they use like in skating costumes. And so the dresses require a certain proportion to work, so they had to do a dress for ballerina who's got a long waist, will be dancing the part wearing the blue dress, and she's black. So somebody else also has to wear that dress because they don't dance every performance. And so then they had to find like the other black gal who was the same proportions. So this is why Val has just been losing her mind. So not only is the dress difficult, the fabric looks difficult, but figuring out how to make dresses so that everybody had something that fit. And I will report back next week after I've gone to the ballet. So normally I don't go to the ballet because it doesn't really interest me, but I want to see Val's final performance. So that's why we're going. And we have given ourselves permission to leave at the intermission if we don't love it, because I am selfish. And we got to get up at 5:45 tomorrow to catch our plane. So I have no idea. You know me, I just learn what I have to. And Amy says something, but it's kind of gotten lost. Oh, Joy sounds amazing. Okay, so there is Isabella, and I bet you didn't actually request, and I said yes, even though I should have, but there you are, Isabella. And where are you coming from? I can just see the little picture, and I have no idea how to turn you off. So there you are. Oh, southernmost Brazil. Wow. So she has been ripping out her hair and says that she really feels it doesn't matter, Isabella. It's fine. Lovely to have you. I'm going to sign off here in a minute. So is my age, not quite as old. So it was a little bit much to juggle with at her age. So let's see, Isabella. Okay. So I think I at least turned your sound off. So knit selfishly. Take the time that you need to figure out what you need on your projects. I know we all knit, at the end of our workday. It's hard to do those hard things like figure out how to get to your armhole shaping done or whatever. That's what always slows me down. So then maybe what you need to do is to give yourself some time over the weekends to allow yourself to figure out what to do. And if you need help, of course, I have planning sheets that you can use, and you can go to my education site and download those, or I don't know that they're on my website. So if you want them, just message me and I'll send them off to you. So it's nearly time for the music hour. I got to shove stuff into my carry-on and get those running shoes out of the closet and grab a pair of rubber gloves. So I'm ready for our little adventure. And I want you all to have a wonderful weekend. Is it still really cold in the East Coast? We're having a few days of moderate temperatures, and tomorrow we're supposed to have rain and snow showers. It's been snowing up in the mountains. So yeah, it's still winter. We're going down to Southern California, and it should be in the 60s, although walk on the beach weather, not really get into summer clothes, but always fun to go do something else. So bye-bye, have a good weekend, and keep knitting.